Some of the worst financial advice you'll ever hear is advice that sounds sometimes reasonable, especially when you're in your 20s. Things like, you're only young once, spend your money, you only need to make the minimum payment on your credit card, like, you don't need to worry about retirement yet, go to the most prestigious university you can, and, just put money in your savings account. Some of these statements have a little bit of truth behind them, but taken literally, they can put you years behind financially. So, today I'm going to go through 5 pieces of financial advice that I think you should be very careful about in your 20s. And as usual, guys, I'm not a financial advisor, so this is not financial advice. This is purely for educational purposes only. Number 1, if you have savings in your 20s, you're living your 20s wrong. I've actually seen this sentiment quite a bit, and I understand where it comes from, right? When you're young, of course, you should travel, you should go out with your friends, you should have experiences, and you shouldn't spend your entire 20s sitting at home trying to save every possible dollar. And I agree with that part, but to a certain extent. And I think that there's a massive difference between enjoying your 20s and financially sabotaging your future because you're young, right? You can do both. You can travel while you still invest. You can go out with friends while still saving. You can enjoy your money while, still building an emergency fund. And, your 20s are a great time to have experiences, but they're also potentially one of the most valuable decades for building your financial foundation. And the money you invest in your 20s has decades to compound. So don't let someone convince you that having savings means you're wasting your youth, right? Have fun, just don't spend your entire future doing it. Number 2 is just pay the minimum on your credit card. This might be one of the worst pieces of advice on this list. If you have a credit card balance that you're carrying from month to month, you're potentially paying an extremely high interest rate. And paying the minimum doesn't make the debt disappear, right? It just keeps you in debt longer. You could be paying interest for months or even years on purchases that you made a long time ago. And here's the problem: the longer you're paying high interest on debt, the less money you have available to invest and build wealth. So if you have credit card debt, especially, high interest debt, getting rid of that should generally be a major priority. Credit cards can, of course, be incredibly useful when they're used responsibly, but there's a huge difference between using a credit card for convenience and paying it off, and using a credit card to spend money you don't actually have. If you don't have the money to pay off the purchase, you should, of course, be thinking really carefully before putting it on a credit card. Number 3 is you don't have to worry about retirement until you're older. This one sounds reasonable because retirement is, for most people, the vast majority of people, decades away. And if you're 20 something years old, retirement probably does feel incredibly far away. But that's exactly why your 20s are so powerful, right? It's time. If you invest early, your money has decades to potentially compound. You don't necessarily need to invest huge amounts of money right now, right? Especially because you likely have less money when you're, younger. But even developing the habit can be incredibly valuable. For me, I started investing as soon as I had a full-time job, and as my income increased, I increased my contributions. Because for me, the goal wasn't to become a millionaire overnight. Well, if that could be the case, fantastic. But the chances of that happening are so slim, right? So my goal was just to get started. Because there's a huge difference between starting at, say, 22 years old and starting at 42 years old, right? It's still possible at 42. It's just so much harder than if you started that 20 years before, right? You can't go back and get those 20 years of compounding back. So no, you don't need to have your entire retirement planned out at 22 years old, but you should absolutely start thinking about your future, right? You don't need to know exactly where you're going. You just need to actually start moving in the right direction. Number 4 is go to the most expensive university because it has the best reputation. And now my take on this might be slightly controversial, so I want to be careful with this one. I'm not saying university reputation doesn't matter at all, because it can matter, and in many cases, it does matter. And, certain schools can have stronger programs, better connections, better recruiting opportunities, or even sometimes, specialized programs that make the cost worthwhile. But I don't think you should just automatically assume that the most expensive school is the best financial decision, especially when you're paying, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars more for the same or a very similar degree. Early in your career, where you went to school can, of course, matter, right? Your education is on your resume. It can help you get that, first or second opportunity. But as you gain experience, or as I'm told and as I've experienced so far, your actual work history, so, your skills, your accomplishments, and, your professional network can become increasingly important. And if you graduate with a massive amount of student debt, you're also starting your career kind of at a financial disadvantage. Instead of being able to invest your money, build an emergency fund, or, save for a home, a large portion of your income might be going towards paying off your education. So, when choosing a university or a college, I wouldn't just ask which school has the best reputation. I would actually kind of look at, what's your ROI? What's your return on your investment? What does the degree cost? What career does it lead to? What are my expected earnings in this career? What opportunities does the school provide me? And, can you get a similar education somewhere else for significantly less, right? Education should be looked at and is an investment. Treat it like one. Number 5 is the best way to save your money is to put it in a savings account. Now, savings accounts absolutely have a place in your financial plan, right? If you're building an emergency fund or saving for something you'll need the money for relatively soon, keeping that money, kind of safe and accessible can make a lot of sense. But I wouldn't automatically consider a savings account the best place for all of your money, right? And why that is, it's because of inflation, right? If your money is earning a low interest rate while prices are increasing faster than your money is growing, your actual purchasing power can actually decline over time. And that's why I think it's important to distinguish between saving money and building wealth, right? Your emergency fund, you save it. Money you're going to need soon, you save it, right? But money you don't need for decades, that's a different conversation. Depending on your situation, investing may be more appropriate to grow long-term wealth. And again, it is very dependent upon your situation. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused. Keeping money in a savings account feels safe, and in the short term, it's, generally, typically more stable than investing. But if your goal is long-term wealth, you also have to think about what inflation is doing to your purchasing power, like I said, right? So don't just ask, where is my money safest? Also ask, what is my money actually doing for me? So what do all 5 of these pieces of advice have in common? They're all missing context, right? Spend everything because you're young. You should enjoy your life, but you should also save and prepare for your future and set yourself up, right? Then, only pay the minimum on credit cards. That might technically keep your account like current, but that can leave you paying expensive interest and get you, into some pretty bad situations with debt. And then don't worry about retirement, right? You don't need to obsess over retirement, but starting early, as I talk about on this channel so much, it probably sounds like a broken record if you guys have seen several of my videos, but it can be so incredibly powerful. Then there's go to the most expensive university. A prestigious school can be valuable, right? Like a school like Harvard, obviously people see that on the resume, they like it. But the cost needs to actually make sense for you personally, and also again, looking at the background of what you're getting into, what you're studying, what kind of jobs there are, and all this other information. Then put everything in a savings account. So savings accounts are useful, but long-term wealth, again, building long-term wealth is a different goal. Financial advice isn't usually, one size fits all. Like I said, it's very dependent upon your situation. And while general things can typically work, you need to make sure that you're doing what works best for you, right? Your goals, your income, your debt, your timeline, and your circumstances all matter significantly. So instead of blindly following advice, I'd focus on a few basic principles. Enjoy your 20s, right? You need to, right? You're young. Likely your body still feels good, you have energy and things like that, right? So enjoy your 20s, but live below your means, right? Avoid high interest debt. Start investing early, even if you can only invest a small amount, right? It's just about building that habit and getting started early. Think about the return on investment of your education and give your money a job, right? Some money should be available for emergencies. Some money can be spent enjoying your life, and some money should be working toward your long-term goals, right? You don't have to choose between living your life and building wealth. You just need to find a balance. Your 20s aren't something you need to optimize perfectly, right? You're going to make mistakes, but you also have an incredible opportunity because you have something that becomes more valuable every single year, right? And that's time. So enjoy your 20s, travel, have experiences, build relationships, take risks, but don't let the idea that you're young become an excuse to completely ignore your financial future, because the decisions you make now can make your 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on a whole lot easier. And if someone tells you you're living your 20s wrong because you have money saved, Maybe they think they're right, but maybe you're not living your 20s the way they would, and that's why they're telling you something like that. But that doesn't mean you're living them wrong, right? Everybody is different. Everybody has, like we've talked about, different circumstances, different goals, and things of that nature. So it's important when you're getting advice from others to really look at your situation, take all the information you can in, gain all this knowledge, and really decide what's best for you. So that's it for the video today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did and you like this type of content and other similar financial content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.